Let us start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Let me just admit everyone into the group. So the topic of today's Dhamma talk, or rather, this is usually the Sutra class that we usually have on Wednesdays from 7 to 8:30. But because the topic is such a profoundly interesting, as well as a topic that is so integral to the practice, we moved the session to allow more people to join in and listen, and of course, in hopes that this might spirit and inspire those joining to incorporate these teachings that are found within the Dhamma into the practice in a manner that we gain a sense of path and way of path leading to, of course, nirvana, and specifically the Sotapanna, Marga, and Phala. So when we talk about Ditthi Visuddhi, we know that Ditthi Visuddhi, the purification by means of view, is one of those knowledges that must arise as a foundation leading on to or leading into the higher attainments of the Vipassana path. Ditthi Visuddhi forms an absolute base. When we come to observe the teachings, to learn the teachings of the Eightfold Noble Path, we know that Ditthi is the first part of the Noble Eightfold Path. When we go over to the Four Noble Truths, we find that Ditthi Visuddhi that we developed, culminated through practice and learning, then comes into one of the main parts that prospers, or rather develops into what we know to be the Four Noble Truths, and how we understand, dissect through knowledge what the Four Noble Truths are, which I will be explaining as we progress today. This Ditthi Visuddhi is, whilst it is, when we hear the word Ditthi Visuddhi, or the purification of view, although it might come about as a sense of learning itself is not enough for Ditthi Visuddhi, because we live in such a world where we have so many distractions in our life, so many commitments in our lives, and so much of thoughts and variations of thoughts that we might stray away from what truly Ditthi Visuddhi is, and just simply settle on the Buddhist philosophy as it is, right? So this Ditthi Visuddhi, as we go deeper into it, the teachings that are offered in the Tripitaka, the words of the Buddha, go into such a great extent of detail that it really teaches us which parts to develop, and in developing those parts, where would it take us? And after those parts of development, what should we do next? It is very systematic, it is very methodical, and in reading and sort of preparing to teach these things, I feel so fortunate at the opportunity that I have as a person to teach this great doctrine and the great Dhamma that we have access to. So when we look at Ditthi Visuddhi, one of the main reasons that we find the Buddhist philosophy, the teachings of the Buddha, and we find a sense of maybe fear, maybe a sense of nervousness that arises with the path or towards the path, is because of, as we know, the verse that the Visuddhimagga was written on, Anto Jata Bahijata Jatae Jahita Pada, right? The fact that our lives are entirely knotted externally, internally, and externally, external to the internal, knotted to such a great extent that we do not or cannot or even fear seeing or fear going upon the path where we might assume that this is something which is just simply far beyond us, right? The realization that these are knots and knots can be taken apart. And in doing so, when the Buddha says Sila, Samadhi, Prajna, there is a sense of nekkhamma in Sila, where we say, no, I am not going to subscribe to these ideas or notions. I'm not going to subscribe to a life of evil or sin. There is a sense of nekkhamma there. That nekkhamma, that renunciation, that willingness to let go of things, the simple pleasures of life, in order that we now commit ourselves to those higher ordinances of vipassana or the vipassana path in hopes of attaining enlightenment, is so very important. It is so very important. So whatever it is that you are letting go, let it be through dana, let it be through sila, whatever it is that you're letting go, that letting go, when done with yoniso manasikara and samma ditthi, profoundly aids and supports a person to now step on a progressive, if I might say, an escalator, which only takes you upward or wherever it is that you want to go. That yoniso manasikara in the initial stage is very important to Ditthi Visuddhi, because with Anto Jata Bahijata, what we realize is these knots hold the mind down. It keeps us grounded to a level where we are now only thinking of the kama loka, the pleasures that we have in our life, keeping those pleasures intact and continuing with those pleasures, if not to progress upon the ladder of the kama loka, which is to attain to higher levels of that same pleasure. And we assume that that is where our stability of life is. When we go into Ditthi Visuddhi, we will realize today a part of it. We are not able to do the entirety of it today. I'm going to go really slow because there's a lot of detail. And you will realize that when it comes to this life, the Ditthi Visuddhi, the yoniso manasikara and the Ditthi Visuddhi, or the Ditthi, I'm not going to say Visuddhi, but the Ditthi, the yoniso manasikara, which goes into the perceival of life, really becomes the first step in realizing anicca, dukkha, and anatta. But not blandly just anicca, dukkha, anatta. This anicca, dukkha, anatta will be broken into several different levels and stages, which then brings us this sort of marvel idea that how systematic and methodical these teachings are. And really makes you even question the fact that this is simply just a religion. It is really a way of life, a progressive path that truly takes us to a state of enlightenment, even through an analytical, contemplative view, right? Now, let us get started. If you already thought that we got started, no, not yet. So, Ditthi. We are aware, and Of course, if you have any questions that you would like to ask him, put it on the chat section, or when the time comes, you can also voice your questions and ask whatever questions that you need to ask. There are 62 kinds of wrong view. We are not going into the 62 kinds of wrong view, 60 odd kinds of wrong view. We are not going to go into it. However, it is important to understand the essence of what these wrong views or how these wrong views have been classified. Any of these views that you would pick out at random from the list of wrong views, miccha ditthi, that are present, that are taught, you will find that there is an essence of keeping a practitioner away from extremes, whether the extreme is positive or whether the extreme is negative. Going within the spectrum of thought, going into any one of these extremes proves or comes to be a fetter in the path, and now becomes something that we know as miccha ditthi. Miccha ditthi, right? For example, an example that we could all relate in terms of the path of practice is, let us say, the belief that everything is happens because of karma. It falls under a miccha ditthi, right? Now, however, karma is something that has been taught by the Buddha. Karma has a very prominent place in the practice as well. However, the assumption that karma is the reason or the cause of everything in life is a miccha ditthi. Now, we find a teaching of the Buddha, but the teaching of the Buddha taken beyond its scope into an extreme, that extreme is miccha ditthi. That extreme is miccha ditthi. That is where we then come into the realization that when ditthi is present or miccha ditthi is present, miccha ditthi focuses on these extremes, and the mind that gets entangled in a thought that draws parallels or can be drawn parallel to an extreme curtails the openness of mind which is required to see nature as it truly is. It closes the mind up. However, vipassana and the practice is more about opening the mind up more than anything else. It's about opening the mind up rather than anything else. In that path, we have three types of parinya. Three types of parinya. One, jnata parinya. Two, tirana parinya. And three, pahana parinya. Jnata parinya is ontological knowledge. Tirana parinya is analytical knowledge. And pahana parinya is the knowledge that is able to dispel or dispelling knowledge. Jnata, tirana, pahana parinya. Jnata parinya, we will start with jnata parinya. Jnata parinya is the ability of the practitioner, to accurately discern between mind and matter with their proximate causes. The ability to discern between mind and matter with their proximate causes. Because of what reason or what causes or conditions did this arise at this moment? Is that clear, everyone? Is that clear? When it comes to jnata parinya, the ability of the practitioner to now be able to discern between nama and rupa, mind and matter, allows the practitioner to now not bring about any sorts of confusions with regards to what is comprehended within the present. What is comprehended within the present. Example, when a certain object arises through the six sense bases, the salayatanas, the comprehension of that data, let us say the eye base, happens because of mind and matter. Mind and matter. In being able to understand or comprehend, the position of mind and matter allows the practitioner to now understand that this is not because, or whatever that is happening is not because of Atma, but quite the opposite, Anatma. Understand, further proliferate or develop upon that understanding to realize the hetu phala with regards to whatever sankharas that arise. Whatever sankharas that arise. Is that clear, everyone? When it comes to jnata parijñā, right? Jnata parijñā, we have out of the five aggregates of clinging, or the five aggregates, let's forget about the clinging, five aggregates, panchaskandha. The rupa is the rupa of the five aggregates. The materiality of the five aggregates falls under materiality. The Vedana, Sanya, Sanskara, Vijnana, the Nama aggregates fall under, of course, mentality. Mentality. Here, when mind and matter in working together, or as it works together, the different conditions or different data that arises through the salayatana basis, we realize there is something called santana prajñapti. Santana panyapti. Prajñapti in Sinhala, panyapti in Pali. Santana prajñapti. Santana prajñapti is, if we are to take the body, the hair, the body, hair of the body, the pictorial images and the conditions that we have together with those images. Meaning, if we are to look at any part of the body, that part of the body would have a name. That name, in just the realization of bringing of that name to mind, that would mean something. That is santana prajñapti. Santana prajñapti. When we go beyond that santana prajñapti, then we have the 28 rupas. 28 rupas. Now, one could imagine, or in the teachings, it would say, when we say 28 rupas, it further explains that a practitioner need not go into each and every rupa, but if the practitioner focuses on even just the four elements, earth, wind, fire, water, these four elements, the comprehension of the ability to discern these four without the whole of the 28 leads to jnata parijñā. Leads to jnata parijñā. Because under those four elements, we are able to discern all rupa. Is that clear, everyone? We are able to discern all rupa. When it comes to the mental side, we know there are 89, 121 chittas, 52 chetasikas, right? And nibbana. Now, one might think, okay, my gosh, this is a lot for us to discern, right? Under jnata parijñā, which, of course, this is all about Ditthi, Visuddhi, it says for the practitioner, he need not go into all the 89 kinds of 52 types, 89 or 121 types of consciousnesses, 52 types of Chaitasikas, and Nibbana specifically, he can simply focus on the aggregate. The aggregate is the perception, the feeling, and the consciousness. The consciousness. This mind, feeling, perception, and volition. These four will then lead to Jnata Parijñā. Jnata Parijñā. This is the first stage of now being able to, for the mind as a practitioner, now being able to develop that foundation for the arising of deeper insights later on in the practice. This is the base, everyone. I've asked Sutra students to read through the Visuddhi Magga. In the Visuddhi Magga, you will find that in the chapter on Ditthi, there is mind and matter. Do you understand? Now that Jnata Parijñā comes into that section. The discernment of mind and matter, but now it says you do not have to go into each and every nama and rupa that there is. Focus on, as for the rupas, the four elements, for the consciousnesses, the aggregate nama, which is then the mind, the volition, the perceptions, and the feeling, Vedana, right? And the feeling, Vedana. In doing so, now comes about Jnata Parijñā. Me Jnata Parijñāව නැති කෙනාට Ditthi Visuddhiය සම්පූර්ණ කරන්න බැහැ. If you do not have the Jnata Parijñā, you are the ability to discern, you are unable to fulfill the Ditthi Visuddhi. That is why we are starting with Jnata Parijñā. The second one, everyone, this is where things get interesting. Right? The second one, Tirana Parijñā. Right? Tirana Parijñā. Tirana Parijñā, now I'm very excited for this section. Tirana Parijñā is the ability of the practitioner to accurately discern momentary phenomena, both mental and physical. Is that clear? Jnata Parijñā was discerning between mind and matter. Tirana Parijñā is the ability of the practitioner to discern between the momentariness, or rather, discern the momentariness of nama and rupa. Is that clear? Tirana Parijñā. Tirana Parijñā is of three kinds. Anicca Parijñā, Dukkha Parijñā, and Anatta Parijñā. Anicca Parijñā, Dukkha Parijñā, and Anatta Parijñā. Is that clear? Right? Excuse. When we go on to now the first of Tirana Parijñā, Anicca Parijñā. Anicca Parijñā is the perfect or qualified. Perfect when we achieve a state of course, when we go into the stages of enlightenment, but or a qualified knowledge of the law of marana. Anicca Parijñā. Anicca Parijñāna is the perfect or qualified knowledge of marana, right? Marana, death. Death is of two: Sammuti Marana, conventional death, and Paramatta Marana, ultimate death. Conventional death and ultimate death. Of these two, what falls under, right? What falls under anicca pariññāna is ultimate death, not sammuti. Do you understand? Not conventional. It is the paramattha. What is sammuti, however? Sammuti marana is the gross sense of marana that we experience upon the death of the body, at the death of this body, right? Sammuti marana. Sammuti marana is something that is unavoidable for any being. All beings, mind and matter, right? Or just mind, or even just matter, will come to an end. That is what sammuti marana is. However, when it comes to anicca pariññāna, what we contemplate is not sammuti marana, it is paramattha marana. Paramattha marana. Now this brings the scope. If you did not hear the penny drop already, this brings the scope of anicca, which leads into the vipassana jnanas right there, which is the focus of anicca. Of course, when we are starting off, we contemplate on the death of the body, the fact that life is impermanent and all of that. But when we have established a sense of sound knowledge with regards to the path, commitment to the path, and now we are serious of the path and our need to progress upon that path, now the scope is narrowed to the fact of anicca pariññāna, seeing through the fact of ultimate death, which is what? Which is the fact that nama and rupa, nama and rupa, when it comes to each and every moment, there are three moments, and all of these phenomena and sankharas that arise die. Upada, titi, bhanga. Upada, titi, bhanga. Upada, titi, bhanga. A chittakshana, a consciousness arises and passes within one mind moment. A rupa sankhara or rupa dhamma arises and passes away within 17 mind moments. 17 mind moments. So the time of 17 minds, the time that 17 minds arises and passes, that time is a span of one rupa. That is the anicca pariññā that we then see within mind and matter. Is that clear? Is that clear? Now, this reminds me of the teachings of Venerable Achan Cha, where he says a true Buddha Putra is not concerned with the death of the body. For a true Buddha Putra, his main concern remains to be throughout the path, the day that he takes up the path of practice and the day that he attains enlightenment, completely vanquishing, eliminating, eradicating the causes that would lead to continued existence. Right? The mere fact, now Ditthi, now let us bring our minds into perspective here, everyone. When we advocate the importance of this life, the extent to which we go in doing good and of course doing bad as well is far more, because our ditthi, our life is all about this life. But the fact is, in the long journey of samsara, this 80 years that I live is minuscule to the long extent of life that I have had in this samsara. This life as a being in this continued cycle of rebirth and death, it is absolutely trivial. to the long duration that I have spent from body to body, body to body. This attachment upon one of these atmas, the sense of self, makes us then do things, makes us think, oh, I only have one life, so why can't I do this? But the thing is, we do not just have one life, we are causes and conditions. And when these causes and conditions arise and pass, we realize these conditions, they just keep rolling on and on and on and on and on. The value that we give to the Kama Loka and the what we experience through the Salayatanas in abundance, the value that we give to that reduces now, because we know, yes, I have this whole samsara ahead of me. And if my actions and deeds are weak and poor at this moment in time, those are the causes and conditions that will create suffering in the future, right? So when we now expand our horizons of thought to now not clinging on to this impermanent body, now I excel beyond the needs of these causes here, these attachments here, to now, even with regards to metta, karuna, mudita, upekha, or even if we are talking about the paramitas, the upaparamitas, or the paramatta paramitas, or even if we are talking with regards to the nekkhammas and the things that we let go and the extent to which we let go, we realize even with regards to our children are our children in this birth. But in our next birth, we will have so many more to come, maybe, right? We might become children of our own. Maybe we will be barren and we will not be able to have children. Maybe we will be animals. Maybe we will be the mothers and the fathers of animals. Maybe we'll be pretas, or maybe we will be in the apayas, in the nirayas. Now see, Ditthi, that expression of mind, that focus of mind is now opened up to the potential, the limitless potential that we have to existence in this life. Hence, the importance that I give to the fact of what am I clinging on to in this life is reduced. Tirana parijñā onto anicca parijñāna, which is what? Which is paramatta marana. Is that clear? So now when we are doing anicca sanya, for a person who's learned and for a person who's truly committed upon the path, what is important, everyone? The fact that we now bring our minds to the death that occurs every moment. Mind and body arising and passing, arising and passing, arising and passing. That leads to the vipassana jnanas arising with great power. Because now we have the ability, because I had not subscribed to the false notion or idea that this life is the most important. No, what you do in this very moment is what is important, regardless of what your life or the situation of your life is. Is that clear? Right? Anicca parijñā. Anicca parijñā, which is paramatta marana. Is that clear? Then we go into, and remember there are two types of marana, sammati marana, paramatta marana. Sammati marana is the death of the body as we then are reborn. Then paramatta marana is the momentary death of each moment that occurs. And the mind, in anicca, or to develop anicca parijñāna, which falls under tirana parijñāna, what do? We bring our mind through practice to focus upon the momentary death that happens each and every moment. Causes and conditions arising and passing, the death that is associated with the death of those causes and those conditions. Is that clear? Good. Then we go into dukkha parijñāna. Dukkha parijñāna. Dukkha parijñāna, sorry. Dukkha parijñāna, everyone, is again the perfect or qualified knowledge of the intrinsic characteristic of ill, of suffering, of dukkha, right? We'll not use the word suffering here, but let's use the word ill, right? ILL, right? With regards to what is of this moment, perfect or qualified, perfect or qualified. This is broken down into two. Vedita dukkha and bhayatta dukkha. Vedita dukkha and bhayatta dukkha. Vedita dukkha is pain, feeling ill. Pain, feeling ill. Bhayatta dukkha is fear producing ill. Bhayatta dukkha. Is that clear? Bhayatta is fear producing ill. And Vedita dukkha is pain, feeling ill. The first one is Vedita, the second one is Bhayatta. Okay? Now, Vedita dukkha, just as the name, the word suggests, is the bodily and mental pain that are felt, right? Felt. That are felt. It can be unbearably painful. It can be slightly painful, right? These pains that occurs into or through the different parts of the body, this is seen as Vedita dukkha, right? Vedita dukkha. Vedita dukkha. Vedita dukkha is bodily, can be broken down into two. Vedita dukkha felt bodily and mentally. Bodily is the suffering, the great pain or acute pain that is felt by the body, right? And if we go on to talking about the mental pain, right? Mental pain, that would be soka, parideva, domanassa, upayasa. All of that is felt under the mental Vedita dukkha. Mano Vedita dukkha. Is that clear? Right? Then one might imagine here, Bhante, isn't bodily pain also isn't that felt by the mind? Why are we saying the bodily pains and then the mental pains here? Right? This is because when we take acute bodily pain, right? Or pain felt by the body, right? The mental pain is felt by the mind, you see, right? Now, let us say a strong feeling of pain arises, let us say at the legs, the thighs. As you sit cross-legged in your meditation, a strong feeling of pain arises by you being in the same posture for a long time. Now, when the mind takes over, now that is Vedita Kaya Dukkha. Is that clear? When the mind now having clung on to that pain, let us say soka or parayo, why am I meditating and Mona dukkha manda kela. If you think about that bodily pain during meditation, now see soka, parideva, domanasa, upayasa, those things can arise. Right? Not only with regards to mental, to the bodily pain, but it can also be very much simply just mental as well. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Is that clear? So this is simply to break apart those two types of pain there. Right? Pain, dukkha parijñā. මේ වේදනාවන් පදනම් කරාගෙන හටගන්න මේ දුක පිළිබඳවයි මේ කතා කරන්නේ. හරි? Now, then we come into Bhayatta dukkha. Fear producing ill. Bhayatta dukkha here falls under Bhaya Jnana. Right? Under Bhaya Jnana. Bhayatta dukkha hataganni නැත්තම් Bhaya Jnana hataganni නැහැ. Is that clear? That is why in the dukkha pariññāna, it breaks it into the bodily and the mental pains of Vedita, that is what is felt, right? And then the ills that are produced because of fear, those two. The latter, the Bhayatta Jnana, is what leads to Bhaya Jnana, which is a Vidarshana Jnana, right? That Bhaya Jnana, which is the knowledge of things as fearful, right, also leads to Adinava Jnana. Adinava Jnana is the knowledge of things as dangerous. යම් කිසි දෙයක් ගත්තම ඒ දෙය තුල තිබෙන ආදීනව දැන ගැනීම. Knowledge of things as dangerous, right? As dangerous. Jati dukkha, jara dukkha, marana dukkha, sankhara dukkha, viparinama dukkha all fall under Bhayatta dukkha. Is that clear? Again, Bhayatta dukkha is fear producing ill. Fear producing ill. Through this arises, right? It falls within the sphere of Bhaya Jnana, Adinava Jnana, Jati dukkha, Jara dukkha, Marana dukkha, Sankhara dukkha, Viparinama dukkha. Is that clear? It falls under that sphere. So you could imagine how poignant and important that understanding of Bhayatta Jnana is. Is that clear, everyone? Now, this is all with regards to Ditthi Visuddhi. I'm not speaking of anything beyond Ditthi Visuddhi, right? All under Ditthi Visuddhi, right? Again, Bhaya Jnana, Adinava Jnana, Jati dukkha, Jara dukkha, Marana dukkha, Sankhara dukkha, and Viparinama dukkha. And Viparinama dukkha. When we think of this, right? A person, because of a dangerous illness, right? Because of a dangerous illness, let us say the illness is quite severe, and because of how severe the illness is, the person has to now be careful in what the person consumes, right? In what the person consumes. Now, when it comes to, let us say, because of the illness, now this patient, the person needs to think about exercise, and specifically, let us say, about food. Must eat healthy, nutritious food, and food that would not further worsen the situation or aggravate the illness, right? Now, the person obviously then would need to eat a lot of vegetables, avoid red meats, and all of these things that we all are quite aware of, right? Eat fruit and all of that, right? He cannot have a rich meal, right? With poultry and fat and all of these things. Now, a friend is to bring, thinking of him and him being ill, a friend prepares a rich meal and brings a rich meal to the friend who is ill. Whilst the meal looks absolutely wonderful and even creates a sense of salivation in the mouth, right? So wonderfully prepared. However, the person, knowing fully well, if I am to consume this meal, a great sense of ill will overtake my body and health. I have, I've been on vegetables and fruit, and, it has my symptoms have subsided to a great extent. However, if I am to consume this meal, it might aggravate my illnesses. I might be vomiting. I might be going through acute pain for the rest of the day if I am to consume this meal. So then what happens? Because of that in mind, the person chooses, however good the meal looks, the person chooses to be careful whilst thanking the friend for going into the trouble of preparing this wonderful meal. The person rejects it and says, look, if I'm to have this, I will be in pain for the rest of the day. And I don't know how that would even affect my illness, and it might actually aggravate it so much more. And puts it aside. That is bhayatta dukkha there. In consideration of the bhaya, of the fear with regard to the dukkha that arises, you put it aside. Do you understand? Right? Because in consideration to the dukkha that can arise in the future, because of the consumption of something which is actually wonderful, because of that fear, you put it aside, or you reject it. That is bhayatta dukkha, right? That is bhayatta dukkha. In meaning that bhayatta dukkha, because that fear producing ill, that dukkha, that the pain that one would have to undergo, the aggravating of the illness and all of that creates fear. Hence, when it comes to the breaking of the precepts, when it comes to the speaking of falsehood, when it comes to the taking of life, now let us say crabs and lobster, wonderful, right? However, the best would be, or the best way to cook a crab or lobster is to what? Kill it by plunging it into hot water. Oh my heavens. Oh. Right? Just simply considering, because of course, this wonderful meal, am I going to take life, cause the destruction to life? And if so, what consequences would there be? What if I was to be plunged into a pool of hot water when my karma ripens? In that fear, what do? We do not do that as practitioners. No, we do not. Right? Now, there you see, because of the fear that arises with regard to the dukkha that would arise not in the present, in the future. In the future. Right? That is dukkha parijnana. Is that clear, everyone? Dukkha parijnana is broken into two, Vedita dukkha and bhayatta dukkha. Bhayatta dukkha is a fear that arises towards the suffering of the future. Hence, what do? We refrain. We adhere to good. We refrain from sin and things that could bring about dukkha in the future. In the future, right? Now, with regards to the Buddha and the Bodhisattva's path, what did the Buddha do? Through his path of bodhisattvahood, which was aimed towards Buddhahood, whilst there were occasions that certain precepts were broken, the Buddha never broke the integral precept of musavada. Why? Because the Buddha's whole practice is to teach, to make people believe in the Dhamma, to reflect upon the Dhamma, to uptake contemplative lives, to give up their livelihoods for the sake of nirvana, which is all not done through arms and fists. It was done through speech. The people needed to believe what this Buddha was talking about. And musavada goes completely against what the Buddha's most greatest strength is, which is the articulation of the absolute truth Truth regarding what? Truth of the nature of things in the universe, in samsara. So the Buddha, as a bodhisattva, never, it is said that the Buddha never broke the precept of lying, musavada. Never commits musavada. So in that sense, we have bhayatta dukkha that arises in connection to, if we go beyond just simple suffering, continued suffering with regard to sankharas that arise, jealousy, animosity, lust, breaking of families, breaking of friendships, breaking of any of these good relationships, bringing harm and disrepute to people's reputations maliciously, speaking ill of people when you're unsure whether there has been truly something wrong which has happened, being frivolous in speech, the pancha sila, the atta sila, the dasa sila, when it comes to those occasions, all of these things, because of the fear of having to undergo the consequences of one's actions and the plight that it might bring upon one's own practice, what do? We do not do it. We do not do it. That comes under bhayatta. Me bhayahinda, right? Bhayahinda, there is a certain sense of refrain that occurs, right? That occurs. That is what we refer to as bhayatta dukkha, fear producing ill. That fear is different to the fear as an akusala. One must remember that bhayatta dukkha is very different to the fear that we experience as an akusala, because akusala fear brings us down, weakens us. Now, what does bhayatta dukkha do? It creates a sense of strength and inspiration to not commit wrong. Is that clear, everyone? Is that clear? Remember, when we talk about Ditthi Visuddhi or the foundations of Ditthi Visuddhi, it is founded upon a person who has committed to the path. When a person commits to that path, there is a sense of, as we said earlier, there's a sense of naishkramya, letting go of that ill and sin, or the need to perform or adhere or in any way to sort of go along the path of unwholesome, right? To go upon that path of unwholesome. That is how we come into a sense. That is how we come into a position of now bringing the mind to a place where the senses are subdued, calm. You are focused upon what is important. And with every step, with every breath that you take, with every passing day, what inspires you even more deeply as you go, is your profound urge, your need, your effort to progress upon the path. So every single day, with your attentive awareness, with Yons Manskara in place, you realize and you begin realizing and uncovering and developing insights that gives you that profound sense of happiness that comes in not doing that which brings harm upon yourself or other people. You draw inspiration and strength from the Dhamma. You draw inspiration and strength from Sila. You draw inspiration and strength through Dana. You draw inspiration and strength through Prajna. May Prajnaving, through the Prajna, the inspiration and the strength of foundations that we develop in order that we now form a strong base of Ditthi, Samma Ditthi, is what we have spoken of today. Is that clear? Is that clear? Right? Now, that is bhayatta dukkha. Right? When we come into the fact of Vedita dukkha, right? Vedita dukkha. Vedita dukkha is synonymous with dukkha vedana, right? And when we talk about dukkha vedana, sankhaya vedanaya sampayutta dukkha, right? No, sorry, sukhaya vedanaya sampayutta dukkha. Sukhaya vedanaya sampayutta dukkha. Dukkhaya vedanaya sampayutta dukkha and adukkama sukhaya vedanaya sampayutta dhamma. Is that clear? Again, I think I said dukkha for dhamma. So, sukhaya vedanaya sampayutta dhamma, sukhaya vedanaya sampayutta dhamma, dukkhaya vedanaya sampayutta dhamma, and adukkama sukhaya vedanaya sampayutta dhamma. All three, that whole Vedana triad comes under Vedita dukkha. Is that clear? Right? So, sukhaya vedanaya, dukkha vedana, and adukkama sukha. Right? Bhayatta dukkha is synonymous with dukkha satcha and with dukkha itself, which is, this is interesting, dukkha, which is the salient, the three salient features present in the three salient features of anicca, dukkha, and anatta. That dukkha that we are talking about, that dukkha that we are talking about in Bhayatta dukkha is present in the Trilakkhana there. So dukkha satcha and the Trilakkhana dukkha is what Bhayatta dukkha is. Is that clear? Right. I'm only taking the facial expressions of Devika, so because that's the only person I can see, right? But I wonder if it's clear. So Vedita dukkha, because we were talking about in Vedita dukkha, pain, feeling, Vedana, right? Pain, feeling, Vedana is associated with the whole Vedana triad, right? Which is Sukhaya, Vedanaya, Sampayutta Dhamma. So Dhamma is with Sukha Vedana. Dukkhaya Vedanaya Sampayutta Dhamma, which is the Vedanas that are associated, or the Dhammas that are associated with the Vedana feeling, right? And Adukkama Sukhaya Sampayutta Dhamma. That is the Dhammas that are associated with Adukkama Sukha, which is neither Sukha nor displeasure. Neither Sukha nor displeasure. Right? So when it comes to neither sukha nor displeasure, this kind of upekka sort of feeling, we don't call it upekka because we're talking about feeling here, but this adukkama sukha arises when the mind is not attached, nor is the mind having friction with the cognized element. That is how adukkama sukha can arise as a feeling. Is that clear, everyone? Right? Now, as I am observing the screen, I'm looking at all of you, right? Devika. Right, as I'm looking at all of you, right, I can see books in the background. However, it is in my peripheral view, right? Those books are not my focused attention. It's not receiving my focused attention. So whilst I can see it in my peripheral view, I'm not thinking about that. Now, what is that? Adukkama sukha sampayutta dhamma, right? That is towards those books. Now, each one of those books, meditation books or whatever books there are, right? They mean something. That's why I have it right near me, all of that. However, because there is no attachment or thought leading to attachment, or because there is no thought leading to the friction of it, right? Then what happens? Adukkama sukha arises there. Is that clear? Right? So those three comes under Vedita Dhamma. Vedita Dhamma. When it comes to Bhayatta dukkha, this Bhayatta dukkha is synonymous with dukkha satcha of the Four Noble Truths and the dukkha that is found in anicca, dukkha, anatma. Do you understand? In anicca, dukkha, anatma. This Bhayatta dukkha is founded upon the fact of course, causes and conditions. Again, causes and conditions from the pariññāna, from the before Jnata Parigna. Causes and conditions. If I am to give up into these conditions that are currently present, it will bring me suffering in the future. Hence, I am not going to react or engage or maybe even take up or subscribe to these sinful conditions that have become present before me. Is that clear? Right? Even if it is a mind, dosa arises. However, when the dosa arises, I realize, my heavens, what am I doing? Why am I giving in to annoyance and dosa that has now arisen in my mind? Because these sankharas are going to make my path more difficult. The path leading to enlightenment, right? The path leading to enlightenment. Now, if we are to take a real situation of disgust, a real situation worthy of disgust. However, when the person realizes and understands what is truly worthy of disgust, what is truly worthy of disgust is the fact that we have been ignorant, are the factors that lead to the proliferation of ignorance and tanha, which has kept the Parijjasampada cycle rolling. Ignorance, because I have not seen the truth. That is the truest form that we should have disgust towards. The fact that we've been so blinded by the fact of all these conditions being present and us thinking that this is true and this is finite in nature. However, when we realize, when we see elements of the world, war, when we see propaganda, when we see all of these different things, people doing things that they should not be doing, all of these things, when we see these things in the world, and in having, as a practitioner, in having the fact where we know there is no soul here, there is no soul. If there is no being, what is this person manifesting? This person that I'm seeing. First of all, the person is Namarupa. The Namarupa is now manifesting upon the cause and conditions that are local to that person. Now breaking away the Atma Samya that we have towards that person. And when we have the bhaya, the fear of subscribing or proliferating kilesas based upon something that was experienced in the six talayatanas, with the refrain that comes through the bhaya, now I transgress, literally transgress beyond the shallow idea that this is a person here doing absolutely horrible things. I come to understand this is the nature of beings. This is the nature of beings. I too might have committed murder. I too, for sure, have stolen, committed adultery, lied, broken families, been in hell and paid for all my sins that I have committed and burnt in Avicii. For sure, I have surely in my past, maybe in this life or surely in my past life, committed sins that cannot be spoken with confidence. This is the nature of this samsara that we live in. Maybe we have had the fortune of karma and support to live respectable lives, and truly respectable. But do not dare think that you have been having that same position or goodwill of mind throughout your samsara. You have gone on a journey to be here with these pleasures right here at this moment. That is that bhayata dukkha you see at play, which comes from the jnata parigna, where we saw nama and rupa, discerning between this nama and rupa and realizing that this nama and rupa comes to be because of what? Causes and conditions, causes and conditions, causes and conditions with the marana samnya, right? Paramatta marana, what did we realize? The fact that these causes and conditions arises and passes, not every minute or every hour or every day, every moment. Every moment. So when you're in your meditation, doing your vipassana, with whatever kileshas that comes to mind, with agitation that comes to mind, with the annoyance or frustrations that comes to mind, when you have this in your mind now, knowing the momentary nature of mind and body, knowing that this frustration or this laziness or this tardiness or all of these things that might arise in your mind during that time are impermanent in nature. Now you shed, you shed, you shed, you shed, you shed. Naishkramya, 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 Naishkramya. Nekkhamma at play. Do you understand? Now the being, because of this Ditthi Visuddhi, even this tiny, minute level, that's why we said perfect, or what's the word that I use? Perfect or qualified. Perfect or qualified. That is where, when that Jnata Parijna starting with that little bit, when you put the effort in to work with it, now it becomes perfect at a certain degree, but it starts somewhere. That is with reapplication again and again and again and again. Is that clear, everyone? Now that becomes the foundation for that Ditthi Visuddhi to achieve a state of perfection, where now the Ditthi, or we subscribe, we welcome, we work so closely with the Dhamma of the moment. The fact that the five aggregates arise and pass away, the five aggregates working together, mind and body, is what creates this person here. These conditions of my past, for the past 28 or 29 odd years, for you 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 odd years, that you have had all those conditions now working together, is what has molded this being right here, right now, of this moment. Your health of body, your health of mind, your health that you have is a manifestation of karmas, of life choices and decisions, of minds brought about by Kamma Jarupa, Utuja Rupa, Chitta Jarupa, and Ahara Jarupa that you have right at this moment. It is not the fact that you have done everything yourself. It is a fact that you have gone through these causes and conditions, arising and passing, arising and passing. The attribute of memory in consciousness, which is a function of consciousness, to remember the essence of the past, that brings about, or that is taken through Sanya Vipallasa, to assume permanence of Atma, rather than to understand or realize that this is Anatma. But because there is memory as a function of mind, I'm thinking that this was me who went through this, all of these 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 odd years. But truly, in the Vidarshana scope, opening up ourselves from this Pudgala, this being at this very moment, to now realizing the limitless births that I have had in the past and the births that I could potentially have in the future, because of the fact that I am so deep in the sankharas that create proliferation of karmas, leading to rebirth again and again and again. The same dukkha, the same kaya going through jara, marana, soka, parideva, dukkha, domana, supayasa, sambhavanti. And that is where the anto jata, bahi jata, jatai, jahita pada, that is where that all sort of links it all together, in thinking that we have no other life than this life and these problems and these happinesses that we have, but that cannot be so further from the truth. We die and we are reborn. The people that we so lovingly held become people that we no longer remember. For some reason, if you have the ability of remembering your past lives, and if you go back to the home that you lived for 40, 60 years, back to those children of your past births and your grandchildren and their wives and their children and all of that, they will not accept you, because it has happened. People have remembered their past lives and they have gone back. Same road, same house, same story of life, and the way that they've not accepted that back. Why? It's a different body. This is not familiarity that we see. So hence, it's not to say that we denigrate and put aside and think that our family and all of these things are foundations. Bhumi, the earth that we stand on, is a bhumi for punya kettang anuttara. right? Develop the karmas whilst you offer the service of motherhood, the service of fatherhood, the service as a son or a child or a Buddhist or whatever it is that you are, from the fullest, warmest places of your heart, developing karmas and developing insights that would lead to the ultimate realization of the path, because we have truly done this so many times. You might kill for your loved ones. You might sacrifice everything that you have, maybe even sell your houses and become homeless to keep alive a loved one who is critically ill. However, just remember that after this life, which is all good, but after this life, you will have another. You will have another after that as well. You will have another after that. That is the importance of that marana there. That scope of marana. The marana for a person who is aiming towards enlightenment, everyone, if you are truly a Buddhist who is truly in focus, and if you're taking pride in that, you shouldn't be thinking of the kaya marana, because that kaya marana does not fall into the vidarshana jnanas. What falls into vidarshana jnana is the momentary marana. Me hama mota. In within the present moment, the death that occurs in mind and body, rupa, vedana, sanya, sanskara, vinyana, arising and passing, causes and conditions, arising and passing. Is that clear, everyone? Is that clear? Right? That all then comes down to, then we have done Tirana Parigna, Jnata Parigna, and in the Tirana Parigna, it was Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta Parignana. Dukkha Parijnana, we broke down into Vedana, Vedaita Dukkha and Bhayata Dukkha. Now we come into, which is the last part of this section, right? Of this section, right? Which is Anatta Parijnana. Anatta Parijnana, right? Anatta Parijnana is the perfect or qualified. Perfect or qualified knowledge of nama and rupa as possessing the characteristic of non-self, right? Now, if we are in our dealings in everyday life, let us say, of course, we have things happening each and every day. If we are from a practitioner's perspective, if we are to sort of change the scope of thought or the way that we cognize these elements of both pleasure and pain through experience, and we come to realize now we see a nama and rupa formulation, which is a nama and rupa formulation, which is, for example, me, Bhante, right? Or you, Devika, or Mangala, or whoever it is who is here, right? We see that person. Now, in our daily dealings, if we break through the facade of Atma Sanya, go into Anatta Sanya to realize these Nama and Rupa dharmas which are present before me, causing me agitation because of the conditions that have presented itself before me through Chakkusota, Gana, Jibha, Kaya, and Manarammana. This Anatta, this is because of mechanisms that are at play, right? These are because of mechanisms that are at play right before me, breaking through that Atma Sanya into the Anatma Sanya. මෙන්න මේක හිතෙන් පිළිගන්න කැමති වෙන්නේ නැහැ. භාවනාවක් නැතුව. Right? The mind will reject this. Even right now, if you're thinking, how can this be practical? Right? That is because of the Kilesha Dharmas inside of you. It is very much practical. Right? The thing is, we navigate our way of thought, way the mind works, the Yoniso Manasikara is navigated from Ayoniso Manasikara to Yoniso Manasikara, where because of this Yoniso Manasikara, your way to conduct yourself and deal with your daily dealings will not be skewered here, but the way that you look at what you're dealing with will change. From Ayoniso Manasikara, where this Ayoniso Manasikara leads to turmoil, dukkha, and all of these things in your heart, to now an expression of gladness, an expression of happiness over the fact that you now can be without reacting and engaging and welcoming that hatred, that frustration, that anxiety, and all of those negative emotions and feelings into your life because of the conditions that have presented itself before you. Through what? Your 6 salayatanas, the 6 sense bases, including the last one being the mind, the way the mind spins stories. Right? The way the mind spins stories. This anatta parigna is the ability of the practitioner to realize the fact or come to process the characteristic of non-self that is apparent and before you with regards to everything. Right? This anatta jnana, right, with regards to all mental and material phenomena, right, are discerned through the ultimate truths. Chitta, Chaitasika, Rupa, Nibbana. Everything which is an ultimate truth has no soul. Minna meka tika hitata kavanam. We practice in a manner through meditation, through contemplative awareness, through sati. We realize, we come into the realization that not all of these things before, ultimate truth, everything with consciousness, with mental factors, with rupa and nibbana, right? All of these things, there is no self here. Modana api gatinne pudgalaya ekka. We have friction, this pudgalaya, this person, and that person. This is the truth that now comes to have friction with one another. But when the persons, that veil of defilement and delusion of the existence of a person is brought down, now we are able to see the fact of causes and condition. This, of course, requires, as we said, nekamma, as we said, the restraining of the salayatanas, the sense bases, and of course, meditation, right? But if done properly, now will arise this ability of you to unsubscribe from the notion of self and subscribe to the notion or subscribe to the reality of non-self, right? Non-self. Anatta parignana. Now, do you have any questions with regards to what we have just spoken? Anyone? I can't be that good. Jnata parinya, tirna parinya. Don't worry, I will not take any offense at all. Right? So we are going to stop here. However, there is one last part, which is now we have gone through the, let me just, right. We have gone through the 3 types of, we have not gone into pahana parijna, right? But jnata parijna and tirna parijna we've gone through. Tirna parijna, jnata parijna is the ability of discerning between mind and matter, right? Discerning specifically between mind and matter. Tirna parijna falls under the discerning of causes, discerning in the momentary nature of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, right? which is then broken up into Anitya Parijñā, Dukkha Parijñā, and Anatta Parijñā. Anicca Parijñā is the contemplation that we derive, or the subscription to the idea of Paramata Marana, which happens every moment. Every moment. That is the Anicca Parijñā. Dukkha Parijñā is broken into two, Vedita Dukkha and Bhayatta Dukkha. Right? Vedita Dukkha is a pain that is caused, or pain feeling ill, the dukkha that arises because of pain feeling. Right? Or Bhayatta Dukkha is the dukkha that arises with regards to the fear. The fear that arises because of the dukkha that arises in the future. The pain of the present with regards, the fear of the present with regards to future dukkha, Bhayatta Dukkha. Bhayatta Dukkha falls under the scope or the horizons of the umbrella of Bhayajnana, Adinavajnana, Jati Dukkha, Jara Dukkha, Marana Dukkha, Sankhara Dukkha, and Viparinama Dukkha, right? Which we are going to go into next week, right? Into Viparinama Dukkha. Now, when it comes to then the last part of those Tirana Parijñā is Anatta Parijñā. Anatta Parijñā is the ability of the meditator or the practitioner now in embracing the Samma Ditthi. The person applies a Samma Ditthi into the scope of cognition, where the factors that arise through the Salayatanas is not cognized through the scope of self-perception, but through non-self-perception. Is that clear? We perceive the non-self in those mind and matter with regards to actually what it said was the four ultimate realities. So, Chitta, Chetasika, Rupa, Nibbana. Chitta, Chetasika, Rupa, Nibbana. If you remember, everyone, if you jump to Jnata Parijñā, what did Jnata Parijñā say? Jnata Parijñā said mind and matter, the discernment between mind and matter, correct? Jnata Parijñā was the discernment between mind and matter. Matter, it said 28 rupas, discernment of all 28 rupas is not required to achieve Jnata Parijñā. You can do it through rupa base, you can do it through the four elements, the four elements. With regards to the mind, it said Jnata Parijñā can be achieved. Of course, you can do 8-9 chittas or 121 chittas or the 52 chetasikas, but you can simply also just focus on the rest of the four nama aggregates of the five khandhas. Is that clear? Right? So this Anatta Sanya, that same Jnata Parijñā is the base, right? So take that Jnata Parijñā into Anatta Parijñā under Tirana Parijñāna, and now apply that same concept there. Anatta Parijñā with regards to Rupa towards the four elements, so non-self of the four elements, or Kalapa of the coming together of the four elements there, Anatta Sanya. Is that clear? Anatta Sanya, Anatta Parijñāna towards the Rupa. If it is Rupa, then the four elements. Patavi, Apo, Tejo, Vayu. Right? These, the four elements there, Anatta Sanya. And then when it comes to Nama, then the four rests. So volition, consciousness, perceptions, and feeling. Apply the Anatta Parijñā to all those four. Is that clear, everyone? Does that make sense? Can someone give me like a thumbs up or something? Does that make sense? Right? Since there are, okay, I'm getting some thumbs ups. Okay. All right. So then, Pahana Parijñā, now Jnata Parijñā, Tirana Parijñā, this leads to Pahana Parijñā. Pahana Parijñā, everyone, is the Parijñāna when it comes to the dispelling. Parijñāna, when it comes to the dispelling, occurs towards hallucinations. Hallucinations. What Are the hallucinations here Nitya Vipallasa, Sukha Vipallasa, Subha Vipallasa, Sukha Vipallasa, Subha Vipallasa, and Atta Vipallasa, Atta Vipallasa, right? Atta Vipallasa, which we will go into next week, same time, okay? So there's a lot of data for all of you today. Please, if you have any questions, this is your time before we close the session.
Bhante, excuse me. Yeah. You said same time means next Saturday?
Yeah.
At the same time? Okay. Just wanted clarification.
Okay.
Okay.
If there is a change, I will send an email. Okay.
Okay, Bhante.
April Fool's Day. All right, good. How apt. Now, if there are no other questions, everyone, I hope that you got something out of the session. There is, yes, Jayanta.
Bhante, do you have any notes on those? Any electronic soft copies of these the things that you mentioned?
Electronic soft copies of the things that I mentioned. I have my notes, which I can share, right? I have my notes, which I can share, but not from one specific place.
Right.
Right. But I will try to see whether that can be, because I understand that it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Okay, Jayanta, I will try to.
Thank you.
Together. Okay, Jayanta. Thank you, Bhante. Delivered with grace. All right. So thank you, everyone. I hope that the session was fruitful and that you had received a lot through what was rendered today. And of course, it is not the end. We have some beautiful sections to come. So we will continue next week. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely rest of your Saturday. Terwan Saranai.
Thank you, Bhante. Terwan Saranai.
Terwan Saranai Bhante.
Terwan Saranai.
Terwan Saranai Bhante.